Second question for the panel, and John, I'm going to go to you on this first. What future issues or questions, for you, John, related to analytics, do you believe companies will need to tackle as they continue to drive and evolve their DE&I agenda?
So to me, it goes back to the key drivers. So we have a lot of data now, right? 10 years ago, companies were struggling just to have data and to think about metrics and dashboards and all that good stuff. Now we have a ton of data, and the question is, what do we do with it? And how do we advance our understanding of what's happening in the workplace? And so to me, again, it goes back to the analytics piece around linking what we're doing with our key HR practice areas. So we know, that the best recruitment and assessment and selection practices can help create a more diverse pool, but if we're not retaining them, we may be at sort of a net negative at the end of the day. So just thinking broadly about the entire cycle and what the drivers are at various phases, I think is the next horizon. It's hard work, it's science, it's not all that, it's not fast, it's not easy, it's complicated and messy. So I think that's what's ahead. So I think, if you have the patience and resources and sort of discipline to think more of like in a many month cycle, there's some real payoff there, right, to getting underneath the surface of what might be happening. So to me, that's sort of what's ahead.
Yeah, if it was easy, we would have made a lot more progress on this sooner with all the focus it's gotten. So, but the time is right, that's for sure. Tony, how about you?
I think what some of the things that we've seen is just what are the methods for improving or increasing leader commitment? And what does that mean and what does that look like? And so I think about it in 4 areas, but one of the areas is increasing leaders' experiences with diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we enhance their experiences that they can engage in? The other one is how do we increase their participation so that they become more visible and they connect more with their employee base, and particular diverse talent employee base, so that people have access for interaction and talking with them. So participation becomes important. Development, it seems to be a lot of companies are doing that well. They're thinking about trainings and all those other things. Oh, we're going to give you unconscious bias training. And then the last area is accountability. And so what are we doing to think about how do we increase their accountability for effectiveness in the space? What are the rewards? What are the systems? What are the things that we have in place? So when they get the right experiences, they have the right participation, they get the right development, then the right accountability, what we see is that that leader commitment, leader engagement increases, and the employee's connection or understanding of the leader's commitment to D&I also increases.
You'll be happy to know, Tony, the RA study that they presented earlier tracks well with what you just said too. So.
Nice. All right.
Brad, how about you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple key things as companies continue to look to drive these, conversations. And, the first one really relates to, piece that Tony just highlighted, which is that commitment and participation piece. There's a lot of discussion during the session that, as companies have rolled out, maybe training or workshops around having these conversations, that if they've been voluntary, that, engagement and participation hasn't been quite as high as they would have hoped, right? So what they've done is maybe reverted to requiring them, or maybe a kind of soft mandate, you might call it. And certainly that gets you the participation numbers, but does that really get you the engagement and commitment that you're looking for, right? So I think companies are really looking for, how do we really get employees to do this kind of voluntarily and really get that engagement and participation up. The second key, issue that we talked about is, what does this look like when employees come back to the office, right? Because to date, these conversations have been all happening virtually, and there wasn't a real clear consensus on whether, doing them in person will be easier or harder, right? And you can make an argument for both. In some respects, we know that some power distance has been kind of reduced during the pandemic as everybody's kind of been on equal playing field. Managers have adopted a more empathetic approach, which may, open up opportunities for more of these conversations. At the same time, you can imagine, being able to sit down with your employees face to face and have these conversations in person might be, easier in many respects, right? So I think companies are thinking about, do they need to adapt their approaches as employees start coming back to the office? But I think much of that is still kind of fluid until we see exactly what the implications are.
Yeah, Brad, let me just add, because there's nothing more puzzling to me than an organization that comes and they share that, hey, we did a book club, we had a town hall, we got these nice principles. Now what do we do? Right. And so the assumption that we sometimes make is that by knowing more that you will do better. And that doesn't easily translate. And so we really have to be intentional about not just kind of increasing the awareness, but what are the other pillars that you can put in place to help leaders transition so that the behaviors of inclusion become what I call habits, right? How do you make it a habit versus a practice that you do because Tony invited you to do so? So it's just a really interesting discussion to hear organizations try to describe that feeling of we did it all, but we still don't know what to do, or worse yet, nothing has changed. And so that's where you're chasing after best practices in terms of getting clear about what is it that I need my leaders to do in this space that's going to create this change. And I think when we get really, really good at that diagnosis, that we discover new opportunities for creating environments that value inclusion.
Yeah, and I think that really hits at, another related theme, which is the sustainability issue, right? Is a lot of companies talk about, oh, we really need to embed this in the business. We need to embed this in the functions. I think the question, how do we do that? And what should we be embedding, to your point, right? And where are those opportunities to really make this sustainable going forward?